Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Clackmannanshire, right in the centre of the country, and we're going to return to one of my local breweries today who I've had some very nice beers from in the past. I would always describe this brewery as a session beer brewery actually. So for this review then we are going to head a mile or two down the road to Alloa, as we've done on numerous occasions on this particular cycle of Scottish beer reviews, and we're going to return to Williams Brothers Brewing Company. So this one is going to be another member of their Totemic Tallboys range. It's called the Talking Head. It's an American Pale Ale and it comes in at 4.4% ABV. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. This is the fifth beer in the Totemic Tallboys range that I'm reviewing for you, and it's the fifth one that I'm reviewing in this cycle of Scottish beer reviews from Williams Brothers. But like I say, I've had some really nice beers from these guys in the past. The two things that would always come to mind when someone asked me about Williams Brothers would be the historic beers that they do and also the kind of session beers. I would always describe this brewery as a session beer brewery. Probably my favourite beer that I've had from them would be the Caesar Augustus, which is a lager IPA hybrid. I really like that one. The Freya Heather Ale, which is their kind of signature historic beer, is also very nice. But two of the other ones that stood out to me would probably be the Pavlov's Dog, which is a nice kind of more malty beer, and also the Paradigm Shift, which was an Imperial Red IPA. I liked both of those as well. But yeah, the Totemic Tallboys are a kind of more recent development at the brewery. It's a kind of more punchy series, of kind of punchy, more experimental series of beers that they've done. So far we've had the Juice Tiger, which was the West Coast kind of orangey leaning IPA. Then we had the Sapien, which was a Kvike double IPA, which was really quite interesting. Then the Chocoblocca, which was that was just a kind of, it was quite a straight up stout to be honest with you. And the latest one we had was the Shea Guava, which was a really big kind of oily and juicy fruity lager actually. So yeah, this one from what I gather should be a little bit more kind of straight shooting than the other ones that we've had so far in the series. An American Pale Ale, 4.4% ABV, so curious to see how this one turns out, especially compared to their kind of regular session beers actually. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Always nice to review something new from Williams Brothers Brewing, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's see how we get on then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Williams Brothers Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland for an extended period of time. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Williams Brothers Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you before, Williams Brothers Brewing Company started out as the family-owned Glenbrew home brewing shop through in Glasgow, and the first ale that was produced by the company that would become Williams Brothers was inspired by a 17th century Gaelic recipe for Freya Heather Ale, which is of course named after the Celtic mythological hero of the same name. But basically back in 1988, a woman of Gaelic descent came into the brew shop with a translation of this recipe from Gaelic into English, and she agreed that she was going to share this with Bruce Williams in exchange for help brewing a batch for her family. And from what I gather, there is a kind of informal agreement where basically her family will get as much of this beer as they want, owing to the success that Williams Brothers have had off the back of brewing this. But they produced the first small batch of this. It was only 5 barrels big, in Tainoak railway station over in Oban, over near Oban in the west coast of Scotland, and the following year word of mouth meant that the demand for this beer had increased quite dramatically. So at this point in 1989, Scott Williams joined his brother Bruce, and they began to develop other historic beers such as the Groatsit, which is a gooseberry wheat ale, the Kelpie, which is a seaweed ale, the Eboloon, which is an elderberry black ale. That one was brought to Scotland by Druids apparently, I think Irish Druids, and then also the Alaba Scots Pine Ale, which I'm pretty sure I have reviewed on the channel for you, but I need to get the other 3 done, come to think of it. But the official start date of Williams Brothers is listed as 1992, and the 4 recipes that I just mentioned to you were produced originally at the Maclay Brewery in Alloa here in Clackmannanshire, but then they also produced them at the Craigmill Brewery in Strathaven to the south of Glasgow, which was actually built by Williams Brothers Brewing. They produced them there between 1998 and 2004. In that year though, 2004, the company relocated to their current base at the 4th Brewery in Kellybank in Alloa, and this was when they adopted the name Williams Brothers Brewing Company officially. But oddly enough, though the last brewery in the old brewing capital of Scotland, as I've told you in previous videos, Alloa used to have a lot of breweries. In Clackmannanshire we've got a lot of whisky bonds as well, where whisky is brought to just kind of sit and age. We actually get a moss on the house here that is a result of the ethanol evaporating. And things like that from the Angel's Share, basically. So yeah, Clackmannanshire does have you know, a history with whisky and beer actually, which is quite interesting. But over the years they've built up the capacity of the Kellybank Brewery, or the 4th brewery as it's called, to be 100,000 hectolitres, which is about 1 million litres of beer per year. But they're currently looking to build a new brewery next to the current site, which will produce 200,000 hectolitres of beer per year, or 2 million litres. But these days the brewery is run by Chris Williams, who is Bruce's son, and Scott is still involved as well. Bruce retired quite a while ago, from what I understand. But at some stage I'm hoping to do a Meet the Brewery segment with these guys. It'd be cool if we could get all 3 of them involved in that. So I guess this brewery really should be called Williams Brothers and Son Brewery now. But yeah, these guys, as I say, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years. They've got maybe about, there's about 30 beers or something like that they brew regularly. I think that's fair to say. There is about 30 different beers that these guys, or there are, I should say, there are 30 different beers that these guys brew on a regular basis, which is pretty impressive. There's not many breweries you'll find that will actually do that. But yeah, as I said earlier, I would always associate this brewery, 1, with the historic beers that they do, and 2, the kind of session beers. You know, Caesar Augustus is probably my favourite from these guys, but the Joker IPA is very popular. The Freya Heather Ale is lovely. I do hope I can try that on tap again sometime. But yeah, a very nice kind of all-round brewery, these guys. They kind of straddle the line between the American side of things, the more modern craft brewing, and the kind of traditional sense, if you like. They kind of straddle that line somewhere between, to be honest with you. A lot of session beers from these guys, in my opinion. But yeah, definitely a nice, interesting local brewery, and one that I would recommend that you try out if you get the chance. I'm not sure exactly where in the world they're distributing to these days, but if they're going to up their capacity to about 2 million litres, I'm sure you'll certainly, some of you watching in the different countries, will have access to this brewery at some point in time. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Williams Brothers Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the history section of this video and get on to actually tasting the beer. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open up. There you can see it's almost like butterfly wings, or like eyes kind of staring into your soul, to be honest with you. It looks like a kind of nose and then a kind of mouth almost underneath, if you like. It looks like crazy eyes. So the artwork on these totemic tall boys, I have to say, is pretty impressive. But there you can see Talking Head American Pale Ale. It tells you on the back here, this extra pale ale is an assertive blend of US hops. Through aromas of pine, a tomahawk hit of a soft, ripe and tropical fruit explodes on the palate. But yeah, brewed at Williams Brothers Brewing Company, Alloa, FK10 1NT in Scotland. So yeah, nicely presented this beer, I have to say. I also wonder if this, I keep seeing that they've got the Swedish pant thing on there, but I've never actually seen these beers over in Sweden, come to think of. I did see for a period of time, I think you were getting Joker IPA and also the Caesar Augustus in Systembolaget, but they were only in Systembolaget for about 3 or 6 months or something like that, which was a bit of a shame. But yeah, you can see here is the Williams Brothers Brewing Company symbol. Just let you have a little look at that before we open up the old Celtic symbol there. But yeah, this one is a half-litre can, and I picked this one up in Sainsbury's for I think £2 or something like that. It wasn't a lot to buy this beer. So the other thing with Williams Brothers you're going to get is a really nice, sessionable, drinkable beer at very good value. But yeah, 500ml can, this one, a half-litre, proper measurement. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Just to tell you the stats of the beer quickly, this one is hot with Mosaic, Citra, Equinox, Cascade and Magnum, and the malt base is lager and wheat malts. So yeah, gold top on the can, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. So yeah, Mosaic, As we know, about 14% alpha acid, normally lovely kind of tangerine notes. Citra is mango, usually mango with a lot of little kind of tropical fruit complexities in it as well. Equinaut is a more kind of limey leaning hop. Again, that one's about 14% alpha acid. And then Cascade is the original, the kind of original IPA hop from the west coast in the States, Yakima Valley. A little bit of grapefruit, but it can also give you some nice kind of juicy, figgy sort of things in the beer. And then Magnum, I suspect, would be the bittering hop in this one. Cascade might be being used both as a bittering and an aroma hop in this one, but it certainly has a very impressive array of different hops in it, this beer, for sure. But yeah, as you can see and as you would expect, this one has poured a very nice kind of, this is quite a bright yellow, almost kind of golden colour. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera. I think my red cover on the drum kit behind me is a little bit of a pain. I maybe should get a white cover for it or something, but we need to wash that a little bit more often, obviously. But yeah, the colour of this beer, I would say, if I shine the light through this one, it's a lovely kind of bright kind of yellow mango juice or kind of pale golden straw type colour. It looks a little bit like a kind of Munich Helles, this beer, to be honest with you. You can see the head on this beer is roughly about a quarter finger. I would say that it's quite a frothy head. It is fading away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer at the moment, but it does have quite an impressive ring just around the edge of the glass. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there. If I put my fingers behind it, you can see there is a really nice kind of natural haze to this beer, but yeah, it's got a little bit of wheat in it, so the wheat will be contributing to the haze a little bit. Remember, when it comes to the haziness of beers, it's usually the yeast and the wheat, and sometimes the oats if we're talking about a New England, or well, always the oats if it's a New England IPA, that will be contributing to the haziness of the beer. But it certainly looks like a very nice one, not unsurprising considering what style of beer this is. They can often be these lovely kind of bright yellowy coloured, these kind of yellowy coloured things actually. But yeah, it certainly looks like a nice beer, this one. The colour of this one, not unheard of for an American Pale Ale. Lovely kind of natural haze to it. So yeah, certainly looks the part. So yeah, let's take a little bit of a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Nothing surprising about the appearance for an American Pale Ale, I have to say. So yeah. Ooh, yeah. There is. Yeah. As I've said in other videos, there's just something very, very distinctive about these Williams Brothers beers. And I don't know, I can never figure out whether it's the malt base or whether it's the yeast, but I am certain that if I was given this beer blindfolded, I could tell you that was a Williams Brothers beer. There's just something about the way their malt base goes together. It's always just got a little bit of graininess. It's almost like Maris Otter. It's almost just like a little bit of Maris Otter malt. It's got a little bit of that kind of graininess to it, a little bit of the brown bready character, but also a little bit of the kind of sweet. It's got a little bit of a sweet caramel note to it. Maybe a tiny wee bit of honey and a McVitie's digestive biscuit. This beer has that kind of typical Williams Brothers aroma to the malt base there. It's so distinctive, and in fairness, I've had a number of their beers over the years, but if you try lots of different ones from these guys, you will notice there is just a real kind of thing with these Williams Brothers beers, and it's either, I think it's mainly the malt base, but I think the yeast, I think they've got their own kind of house yeast strains that make them very distinctive as well. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is pretty nice. It's quite, as I was saying, and I was suspecting this beer might be, this one I really think will be a little bit more straight shooting compared to the other ones that we've had in the Totemic Tall Boys so far. No adjuncts and things. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is very, very nice. So straight away with this one, you're going to notice a nice kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of base to the beer that kind of sits underneath everything. You do have a nice kind of bread crusty quality to it as well. Some sweet, there is a wee touch of a kind of sweet caramel to this one, but as you move as you move out of the centre of the nose almost, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. But yeah, lots of kind of brown bready notes for me, good little bit of bread crust, a kind of slightly sweet caramel note, some McVitie's digestive biscuits. Is there anything else to say about the malt base in this one? Maybe one or two little tiny woody undertones to it, but other than that, it's a pretty straight shooting beer in terms of its malt base for me, but it goes together really nicely and it is quite distinctive. As I say, you'll find similar malt bases in a lot of the Williams Brothers beers, come to think of it. There's just something so distinctive about this that you can just tell it's a Williams Brothers beer. Lovely, lovely stuff. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, for me, there's a little touch of earthiness coming out of this one, and I suspect that that'll be from the Mosaic and probably from the Magnum as well, actually. So there is just a little bit of a kind of earthiness out of the beer. You get a little touch of herbal quality as well, but then you've got quite a nice big floral aromatic quality to this one. I do suspect with this one that Magnum is being used as the main bittering hop. So that's quite distinct there. It's got this nice deep floral aromaticity to it. I would suspect that the other ones are being used as late addition hops. Remember, when it comes to adding the hops into the beer, if you add them earlier during the wort boil, that's when you're going to get the bitterness out of them, the bitter characteristics. But as you progressively go through that the wort boil there, you get a trade-off between bitterness in favour of you know, flavour and aroma. That just kind of progressively comes out. For a pale ale like this, I would be guessing that you've maybe got somewhere between a 60 and a 90 minute boil actually. But yeah, lovely kind of deep floral aromatic quality. This one, it almost gets a little touch spicy, which can be a trait of Magnum. Magnum will give you a little bit of a spicy note to the beer, but then you've also got a little bit of a sort of lighter you've also got a little bit of a lighter grassiness to this beer as well. So yeah, lovely kind of lighter grassiness coming out of the beer for me. Little touch of zestiness to it there, but then you've also got some really interesting fruity characteristics. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I would say you definitely get a wee bit, you don't get so much of the kind of stronger passion fruity and grapefruity notes that you can sometimes get from the Citra. I don't get too much of that in this one, but there's quite a bit of mango for me, and the mango comes across as more oily. Remember, hops will behave a little bit differently depending on what malt, kind of malt base you put them in with. You know, Simcoe's a very good example in a West Coast IPA with caramelly malts, a lot more oily. In a New England IPA with more oaty kind of things, it's a lot more juicy. And in black IPAs, it gives you a lot of lovely red fruity characters. And quite a few hops will behave like that. But yeah, for me, the kind of more citra notes in this beer are distinctively more oily. It's a more oily mango that you get out of this one. You don't get too much in the way of the tropical complexities that you can sometimes get from citra in this beer either. You know, you get an oily mango out of it, and then you really get, you can feel and detect the sort of more tangerine oily notes from the Mosaic in this. You also got a good bit of the lime from the Equinaut, and those two seem to be kind of working together quite well. But I would say you can notice that the lime comes out a little bit more kind of on the front of the nose, if you like. There's a wee touch of that almost figgy, very slightly red fruity kind of thing coming out, which I suspect would be the Cascade, to be honest with you. So yeah, that you can pick up little elements of all of the hoppy notes in this one, but to me the fruits come across as you know, kind of quite oily, to be honest with you. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how this is going to translate into the actual flavour profile of the beer. So you know, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. But I think this one comes across really interestingly. So to sum it up, lovely green component to it, lovely kind of deep floral aromaticity, big oily fruits, and you can detect little bits and bobs of all the hops in this, but the malt base is really distinctively Williams Brothers, that kind of grainy brown bready sort of thing, and a little bit of biscuit and brown sugar in it. It's really nicely done. So thumbs up to Williams Brothers Brewing for this one. But let's have a taste of this now and see how we get on. This one is the Talking Head, an American Pale Ale, or an extra Pale Ale as they're calling it, coming in at 4.4% ABV, beer number 5 of 6 as of January 2020 in the that I'm trying, I should say, from the Totemic Tall Boys range. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that is kind of as I thought. That is as I thought. It's a solid pale ale, this one. But yeah, it is very, compared to the other beers that we've had in this series so far, it is very straight shooting, but it does have a hell of a lot more bite to it than some of the other Williams Brothers beers that you're going to have, actually. Yeah, as I've been saying on the channel previously, I've not reviewed all that many pale ales, to be honest with you. And I think the main reason for that is that, you know, as I say, normally based in Sweden, but I think for tax reasons, I think it's just more economical for the Swedish breweries to make IPAs rather than pale ales. But remember, the pale ale and the IPA are related to each other. It's the hop to malt ratio that changes. I think other than that, the beer's got a lot of similar characteristics. So this one for me It's really quite nice. It's basically like a more kind of hoppy and bitter version of some of their kind of sessionable beers that they do. So yeah, thumbs up to them for this. I think this is a solid beer. Absolutely. But yeah, first impression of it though is that it's very distinctively, you know, it's really distinctively Williams Brothers this. Really nicely executed, but it does dry out this one quite a bit actually. It does dry out and become very, very crisp the further that you go into the aftertaste with it. So yeah, where to start with this one then? Where to start? Yeah. Ooh. Lovely. So yeah, let's break down the flavour profile of this one then. So straight away with this beer, as you go across the middle of your palate, you'll feel that nice kind of pale malty base just kind of blanketing the middle of your palate there. This one, remember, has lager and wheat malts in it. So yeah, it's actually, I would suspect that there's maybe a little bit of I do wonder if there's a wee bit of Pilsner malt in this, because it really has a little bit of that kind of crispy dryness there. But yeah, you do get quite a crisp sort of, the middle of your palate is just kind of blanketed with this sort of pale malty base there, and it's quite, it's actually, you know, like a very crisp sort of fresh white bread. But there, as you go to the middle, as you go towards the back of that kind of, if you go to the border region between the middle and the back third of your palate, if you like, there's a real dryness in the beer there, and it's almost like a kind of German Pilsner malty type thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of Pilsner malt in this as well, to be honest with you, because the beer really does have a real kind of crisp, dry quality to it there. But as you go into the, pardon me, into the back third of your palate, again you can feel there's a slightly thicker white bready quality there, and that's the wheat that's giving you that. If you go to the very, very back of the palate, you can feel a few little bitey elements from the wheaty note there, just a little bit of that almost bitey, spicy sort of thing from the wheat. But as you move further forward, you can feel that it just, that the wheaty note's just kind of smoothing out a little bit, and as you reach that border region between back third and middle third of your palate, it just drops away a little bit, and as you move into that kind of middle third of your palate, you can feel the nice sort of soft white bready quality in there, just underneath. But yeah, the malty side of this beer, I think, is very, very nice in that sense for sure. But yeah, the quality of this beer, I think, is really very, very nice. But yeah, the malty side of this beer is quite straightforward. It is really straight shooting, but it works very well. But yeah, as I say, when you move into that middle third of your palate, the thickness just drops away, you get that crisp element there. Then in the middle of the palate, you've got that soft, but still quite crisp, white bready sort of thing. If you go to the very centre of your palate, you've got a nice kind of sweet, sweet, just a little bit of a sweet, boozy, caramelly sort of thing there. But then as you move further out from that very centre of your palate, it's a little bit more, it is a little bit more sort of, how would you say, it's a little bit more kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity, but it's not too biscuity in fairness, and you do get just, there is a little bit, you can feel a little bit of the booze in this beer, which is kind of unusual for 4.4% ABV, but yeah, you do get a few little bits of booziness out of this beer too, which is quite interesting. But in fairness, I think that kind of covers the malt base there, but you do get, you can feel there's a more kind of brown bready sort of thing coming out of this beer the further that you go into the aftertaste, and it's that little bit of brown bread, that little bit of graininess and brown bread for me that really kind of gives this beer away as being a Williams Brothers beer. So yeah, that's what I would say about the malt base. But on the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, there's a distinctive little bit of earthiness in there. That'll be both the, I would say, it'll be the Magnum and the Mosaic that are giving you that. But as you move further forward from that, very, very quickly, the sides of your palate become nice, and they become quite big and spicy, I would say. It maybe does, this beer maybe does have a wee bit of a kind of piney resin note underneath it. I would say, yeah, there's maybe a little bit of piney resin in there. But yeah, the whole sides of your palate are very, they are very sort of floral and aromatic, but it's quite spicy as well, and that's the kind of trait of Magnum, if you like. But as you go round the very front curve of the palate, the beer's a little bit lighter and grassy, but it almost just has a wee bit of a slightly peppery, spicy sort of thing around there. And again, that's something that I've always found with Magnum. Magnum is quite bitter and it's quite dry and sort of spicy in a lot of ways. So thumbs up to Williams Brothers again for the green component of this beer. This is definitely one of the more bitter beers that I've had from them so far. So that's quite a different direction, I would say, compared to their other sort of sessionable beers, if you like. This one is definitely quite a bit more bitter than even the kind of Double Joker and things like that, for sure. And I would say that stylistically speaking, this is definitely a West Coast Pale Ale. Definitely a West Coast Pale Ale, just to be absolutely clear. But if you take a gulp of this one, you will notice as well that the malt base is distinctively sweeter than it is if you just take a little sip, so you get more of that kind of sweet, slightly caramelly and biscuity sort of thing in the middle of the palate. Could it be a little bit of carapils that's in this one? I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it does get sweeter if you take a slightly bigger gulp of it. But yeah, on that front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And again, with the level of hops that you have in this beer, you're getting quite a few distinctive things here. But yeah, on that front third of your palate, if you go towards the back of it, and just on that border region, you do actually get quite a bit of a darker kind of grapefruity quality there. I would suspect that Magnum is playing a role. Perhaps the Citra will also give you a little bit of that too, and the Cascade might give you some of that really dark grapefruit. But then yeah, as you move further forward, it kind of gradually just mellows out a little bit. You get a wee bit of a lighter passion fruit, then you get the kind of more mango-y qualities in the fruit. Those kind of fruits, they do have a little bit of juiciness to them, but in fairness, there's a little bit more of an oily character there. Again, it's more of a West Coast Pale Ale, this one, rather than anything else. But you've got a nice juicy kind of mango quality there, and that kind of spreads forward a little bit. You'll maybe get little hints of apricot as you move further forward, but then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, that's when the Mosaic and the Equinox really start to show their head. For me, you get the tangerine oranges. The lime sort of takes a little bit of a back seat almost, but then as you move to the kind of towards the very tip of the tongue, you will get a little bit more limey quality out of it as well. As you go further into the aftertaste, I think you get a little touch of like a, you know, is it almost like sort of very lightly figgy, very lightly kind of like strawberry-ish. It's got just a little tiny hint of that. It's that very slightly red fruity kind of thing that you'll get from Cascade. Cascade's a really interesting hop to use in beers like this. One of my other favourite local beers is actually the Schiehallion Pilsner beer from Harveston Brewery, which is just a few miles away from this brewery, but that uses Cascade in a Czech-style Pilsen beer. And you know, Cascade has become very familiar to me after that, and I always find that Cascade just has this little, you know, red, almost creamy red fruity note to it, and you get a little bit of that in this beer as you go further into the aftertaste. So that's a really interesting point for me that I would make about this beer for sure. But yeah, it's got a lovely, just sort of very light, juicy kind of red fruity note to it. I do think the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, you get more and more of the Cascade. It's almost like the Cascade, you've got all those flavours that I just mentioned, and then underneath that you've just got that slightly red fruity kind of thing from the Cascade, which is really interesting. That just sits underneath with a little bit of a sort of white, pale malty, white bready kind of character. So yeah, pale malty, white bready kind of characters underneath, strong grapefruity notes, a little bit more passion fruit, then the mango, then the kind of little bit of apricot, then tangerine oranges, and then lime right on the kind of front tip of the tongue, and around the very front edge, of course, you've got that peppery, grassy kind of zestiness coming out of the beer too. But yeah, as I said, by far this is one of the more bitter beers that I've had from Williams Brothers Brewing Company. I think trying to remember if the Juice Tiger was as bitter as this, but this could well be the most bitter beer that I've had from Williams Brothers Brewing, and it certainly works very well. It's a really nicely executed pale ale, this one. Very easy to drink, and it's got a little bit, to me it feels a little bit more kind of boozy than some of the other Williams Brothers beers that I've had as well. So yeah, but as they say, it's only got a little bit of wheat and a little bit of lager malt in it, they said. So maybe it's just the combination of the malt base. Maybe it needs something just a little touch, just a little tiny touch sweeter in the malt base. But I think that if you did that though, you'd probably be taken away from the kind of signature brown bready sort of thing that we've all come to know and love with Williams Brothers. So that's a wee thing to think about. But yeah, it's a nicely executed beer, this one. It is very, very interesting. It's the most straight shooting we've had from this Totemic Tall Boys range so far, and I'm impressed. I am impressed with this. It's cool to see a brewery that are so well established trying something a little bit different, and you have to take your hat off to them for that. They've pulled off a really, really solid beer here. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I think we can leave the flavour profile there. We've covered it quite well now, but let's look at the mouthfeel just to round off this review. But yeah, I would describe this beer as being right in the middle of the spectrum. It's mid-bodied all the way. The carbonation is very, very smooth. Yeah, carbonation is very, very smooth, but it does give you a degree of crispness as well. Nice bit of wetness to the mouthfeel. It's that Scottish tap water, as we always say. You know, we're very, very proud of our tap water in Scotland, and it feels, you know, very, very clean. It's a very clean, crisp, and fairly easy drinking APA, this one. But yeah, it does have a good little bit of bite to it. I would definitely say that. It does have a bit of dryness and bite to it and spice, this beer. So yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, in terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this beer's got a good little bit of bitterness to it. It must be about 60 IBUs, potentially even a little bit more than that. You know, it's got to be 60 IBUs seems a little bit unusual for a pale ale, so but yeah, 50-60 IBUs I think wouldn't be unreasonable to estimate for this beer, but it maybe seems a little bit more than that because there is a little bit of bitiness from the wheaty side of things, and you know, there's a lot of crispness to the beer. So yeah, it's got a good bit of bite to it, this beer, so maybe it seems a little bit more bitter than it actually is. But the malt base for me, it's got a little bit of smoothness to it, a little bit of sweetness, but it's got that kind of distinctive graininess, the brown bready sort of quality that you would expect of Williams Brothers Brewing. The fruits for me are a little bit more oily, and the grapefruity side of the beer just makes it a little bit kind of darker as well, to be honest with you. So it's quite an old school West Coast kind of pale ale, this one, but the amount of flavour that it has and bite and things that it has for a 4.4%er is pretty damn impressive actually. So when you consider what style this one is, I think this is quite an interesting beer, because the pale ales by nature are not the most kind of punchy beers, but this one does give a good account of itself in that regard. So yeah, this is pretty damn solid, I have to say. Yeah, pretty old school West Coast pale ale, this one, in my opinion. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this review. I think that sums it up quite nicely. Big oily fruity characters, everything just fits together in this beer really nicely, and it still retains that distinctive Williams Brothers touch, so thumbs up to them for this. I'm curious to try the last one in the range now, so you'll see that video coming up in a little while, of course. But yeah, this one was the Talking Head, a 4.4% American pale ale, a hell of a kind of bitey, spicy and slightly bitter thing from Williams Brothers Brewing Company in Alloa in Clackmannanshire, here right in the centre of Scotland. So yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Williams Brothers Brewing Company. We will return to these guys fairly soon for the last Totemic Tall Boy beer as of January 2021. So I hope you've been enjoying seeing more Williams Brothers beers on the channel, and this was a really nice one to review. So make sure you check out Williams Brothers Brewing Company, have a go at the Totemic Tall Boys. Otherwise, Freyich and Caesar Augustus would be my first recommendations. Joker is always very popular, and then you've got all those historic beers to have a look at as well, and lots of other interesting things. But yeah, check out this brewery, check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys again soon. The Talking Head American Pale Ale, 4.4% ABV from Williams Brothers Brewing Company in Alloa, Clackmannanshire here in Scotland. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and catch you guys on the next one.